I wanted to ask you a similar question about the Detroit Pistons and just like your biggest takeaways from this past season, just a 30,000-foot view of them going 2-1 and then going 2-28, setting the losing record.
They weren't actually 2-1. That was an alternate universe, right? They didn't actually win 2 of their first 3 games and have us excited. That didn't actually happen, right?
Oh, it happened. I was on the this was a Dan Burke Pro podcast.
Oh my gosh, man. That seems like so long ago. I think part of my overview is what we talked about earlier. This team has to get better at the foundational things. The modern NBA requires you to make outside shots and provide floor spacing. The modern NBA requires you to not turn the ball over at near worst league, the near bottom of the league. You can't foul and put the other team on they're not winning on the margins in any of these areas, and they have to improve in those. I think the other thing I take away is you either have to hitch your wagon to Cade Cunningham or completely restart and rebuild all over. I don't have the stomach or appetite for that. I do believe in Cade Cunningham. So let's find out who Cade wants to be, find out what you think Cade is, and let's start building that out around him. And does Jaden Ivey fit with that? Yes or no? Does Jalen Duren? Does Asar Thompson? On down the line. And if they do, keep them. If they don't, maybe a consolidation trade is in the works. And then the other thing is, I agree with everybody that Monty Williams was not a great coach this year. I would never defend that, but I think it's sometimes what gets lost in Monty not being a good coach is this was not a good roster either. And I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that Monty not being great, Troy not being great, the roster not being great, all of that contributed to 14 wins, but all of them were factors, including a poorly built roster that only slightly got better at the deadline. Like, I think that was maybe the best single portion of a calendar year that Troy had. I like the trades he made. I like Simone Fontecchio. We'll see if the Grimes move. I like the process of it, the idea of it, but he obviously wasn't great in the 6 games that he played. They have to get on the same page, and they have to start building out a foundational roster that makes sense around your number 1 pick, who you're probably giving a rookie max extension this offseason.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you said is like what I have said on this podcast. Like, I was asking for a veteran center going into the last season.
Yeah, and that's a great call by you. I did not see that. I had other people bring that up to me. You were obviously one of them. And that's a great vision from someone like you to see that, because it wasn't an area I saw.
Yeah, like the Taj Gibson move, I thought should have been made last summer. Now, obviously, last free agency, there was more of a player pool. There was more players that maybe, I know people get hung up on the Cam Johnsons, the Grant Williams, the PJ Washington, stuff like that. I'm not going to get into that, but I'm saying they kind of just sat free agency out last year.
Yep.
Like, they traded for a guy in Joe Harris that was coming off a serious calf injury and expected him to get back to form. That didn't happen. The Monte Morris stuff was really weird. He was healthy, then he wasn't. I'm not going to question a medical doctor because I'm not one, but that whole situation and process was weird. But to your point, I love the trades. Like, Simone Fontecchio, I think, is very underrated. He doesn't get talked about enough. He could easily become a 20-point per game scorer next to Cade Cunningham. He really could. He's that good. The Quentin Grimes stuff, I'm kind of on the fence. I just kind of looking at his numbers, like, kind of seemed like he peaked in his second year, and he's just kind of struggled with injuries ever since then. I'm hoping he can have a good season going into this summer, but I just think the season as a whole, he didn't really bring a whole lot, didn't really give Monty a whole lot to work with, and I think fans expected playoffs right off the bat.
I will backtrack just a little bit. I do want to quite the process of that trade. The idea of a Quentin Grimes type player makes sense. Where I want to backtrack a little bit is they probably didn't get the value out of Bojan Bogdanovic that they should have. That's where I'll say that. And that was a mistake made last offseason or the deadline before. I'm just saying I like the idea in the process of the players they acquired in terms of what Fontecchio should be, what Quentin Grimes could be. And we have seen Quentin Grimes be that guy in the league on a good NBA team. Now, to your point, did he peak? Is it straight regression now? Is it injuries? Whatever. I will also say Monte Morris made sense it just never materialized in the way that you had hoped. Because what did we talk about? Offensively, this team didn't space the floor and they turned the ball over a lot. You know what Monte Morris does? He makes threes and doesn't turn the ball over. We just never saw it actually happen in Detroit in the same way. Like we said, Quentin Grimes, what's he supposed to do? Make threes and defend. If you told Pistons fans you were getting a kid that could do that, you'd be pretty excited. We just didn't see him do it in the 6 games that we saw. And so that, Fontecchio was the one that I think came in and did play above expectations, or at least to expectations. But I said this the other day. What I think is nice for Fontecchio is he gets to play in a role that he is suited for. I think a lot of guys on this roster are being asked to play in roles 1 or 2 spots above what they're actually capable of. And while I've warmed up a little bit more to star hunt a little bit, go get a bucket getter to put on this team to allow everybody else to settle into more reasonable roles.